to also show you this thing to maybe aid in what we're talking about here. Do you see this?
Yeah, I do. Appreciating hidden gems, enabling diverse exchange, transformational concentration. Yeah.
So we could loosely say that like another way to answer the question, the answer that I gave you was let's say more of like a person, like families moving to Superior and like it being a good place to raise our children. Like those are things that like I know like I have a expressed desire for and other people in our community do. But if we were to take forget about us and just look at the place, our working hypothesis would be that that Superior, this place would be expressing these characteristics more.
Yeah. Yeah.
It's a different starting place, and I'm sure a lot of the same variables that were entered into the mix would come into play. But do you have any senses of where a good starting point would be to try to work with some of these qualities?
For all of these things, my immediate question is, why are these important? What do they give us? Don't necessarily go back to what you've got on the existing map, but what does diverse exchange? How does that make something better? All these things are things that you picked on because you believe that they could make a big difference. And then what makes Superior different? So given that, it's what difference do they make?
Okay, let's take the enabling diverse exchange one as an example. Like the difference that the enabling of diverse exchange makes, like I have like this little image of community support there. Like that's like one manifestation of how the diverse exchange comes up is like all the history of like our community helping each other in different ways. And sometimes that's not giving money, it's like helping clean a yard or like helping a grieving family. Let's say it's always been like a melting pot of different types of cultures and people coming in. And it adds to the novelty and vitality of the place. It keeps things like engaging and interesting. A lot of learning comes from that.
Yeah, it's just ducked out again. I missed what you were saying. I couldn't hear anything.
Oh, is the connection shoddy?
I don't know. It's not saying so here, but it just I just didn't hear anything for a short period. But what I was hearing was that that the key thing about a diverse exchange is that you have a very supportive community.
Yep. Yeah, and it's even supporting
and inclusive. I think that they were the words that came into my mind. A supportive, inclusive community.
Yeah. Yep. Yeah, and we could take inclusive to include not just humans, and we can include the support of supporting not just humans.
Yeah. And that's it, isn't it? I mean, that's pretty rare.
It's part of why we have the picture of the javelinas crossing the road, because that's like a real thing that happens here.
Yeah, they look like wild boar.
Yeah.
Yeah, because we, in France, there were wild boar. A lot of wild boar living in the woods around.
Yeah. Do they ever come out and just like run around the streets? Because we'll get that sometimes.
Yeah, sometimes you see them, as you say, crossing a road, or
right.
What you see is that they've been there because I don't know if these are the same, but it looks like somebody's been in and dug up the turf. Yeah. Have you seen them doing that?
Oh, sure. Yeah.
So and then, this, appreciating hidden gems, that there are these gems there, these differences, and appreciation. I mean, they're all things that ultimately, those two things make for better people, don't they? Healthier, happier people, because having things to appreciate is definitely a great thing in terms of the emotional health that you had on the previous diagram.
Yes, that's a good point.
In fact, those two, I think, would definitely have links into emotional health, wouldn't they? The diverse exchange and hidden appreciation.
Right. Yeah, and then the transformational concentration, I mean, it does lend itself, and it has in the past lent itself to like the innovation / like financial capital kind of stuff going on.
Yeah.
Like the transformational concentration, I mentioned there's like this mercurial aspect to that, and why I have the picture of like the gambling here, because like this used to be a mondo gambling place, and you kind of just ask like what are the patterns behind that, but it definitely involves financial capital. Same with the boom and bust of the copper prices. So there's like, I can see like the financial, maybe like like financial capital type things happening within this transformational concentration, like as a result of the transformational concentration, and then more of the social emotional side here. So I think just talking with you about this out loud is helpful, because it's helping me start to see like how these could get translated ultimately into variables, but it's just like little clusters of variables probably.
Yes, yeah, indeed. And what variables that are currently on the map that they would impact. Yeah, this is good.
Now,
I just wonder.
You first.
Sorry, no, you go.
Can these three be represented as like big variables that are almost like roll up variables of other things?
Well, yeah, you could have that, and then have the things going into them about what they are, so you saying, this is about diversity, it's about support. I think so. I mean, have a go at it and show me what you mean, and then I can see. I think that's the thing to do. Cool. And the question that I had was, how much of the Miro model have you managed to transfer?
Most, but not all. In fact, I just kind of started to just like work off of this new one, and then haven't come back to the Miro board, because it's just like I put a variable like, oh, that spurs this, that spurs that. So I'll go back. There's probably like 5 or 6 maybe variables that need to get over. Well, we have a board retreat starting on Friday.
Yes, I know, and I was going to ask you about, how far are you aiming to get, and how are you going to manage expectations? Because there's the thing about this is always, it's always a work in progress, as we've said before, and it's where do we want to get to at the end of your board retreat? What are the outcomes that you're looking for?
So we don't need to have the strategy completely fleshed out by the end of this board retreat, but we certainly would want to have what we would need in order to derive that strategy. So if we were able to have a causal loop diagram of the system in a good enough for now state, and I put that in big quotes, that then reveals to us leverage points that we're collectively interested in doing something about. That would be enough, because we could spend then until the end of December talking about what those interventions might be and what that says about what the strategy is. But we don't need to have that all done. I mean, it was sounding like from conversations we're having with Mark, especially before, that like we could do way more than we think in these 2 days. But we don't need to have here's the report on what the strategy is fleshed out by the end of that. And I think it's totally fine to not push for that, especially because, I mean, just the conversations that come out of this alone, could easily be hours amongst us.
Exactly. I mean, developing this will bring out, a depth of understanding and sharing that without creating something like this as a focus rarely does, in my experience, because you have to be, it's about being really explicit about how everything works and holds together. And having that at a level, I think, basically you can iterate with this. So you can have a diagram that might not be completed. But if you then wanted to look at the next stages in the process, you can use that incomplete diagram to say, okay, well, what parts of this diagram are we able to influence? Are we able to do something about? Yeah. So you can then highlight them, circling them or whatever. And then to say, and of these things, looking at our current initiatives, where do they map onto these things that we can influence? And where are the gaps? Yeah.
Yeah, that's good. And I find myself holding the meta a little bit of like, we may want to do this kind of a process and support other communities within the Copper Corridor to do similar things. But I think if we can just say that, like, we're doing this is an experiment. This is an experiment on ourselves. And part of the potential of doing this experiment is not only just to find our role within impact, like, and how we impact the system of Superior, but also if it does end up lending to some affordances for better action, then it could be what leads us into supporting other communities to do the same. I only bring that up because I was kind of wrestling with like how to contextualize like the bigger potential, and I think it's just like right now this is a test, and if this goes well, then next year, or or further down the line, we can start to explore what it looks like to support other communities with something similar.
Yeah.
So sorry, that was just me kind of talking out loud, but it was somehow helpful.
Yeah. Okay, I've just shared something with you because the baseline is having one of these diagrams that people are happy with. And you've seen the middle panel there, the frequently asked questions for CLDs. Yeah. What I've got on this side, on the left-hand side, is a page that I was just creating, which looks at the different ways of creating a causal loop diagram with a group of people. Yeah. So these are they. Method 1 jigsaw is what we did, just with you. So you do the same thing, starting from scratch with your group. So the questions, the big questions, how will we know the system is working well? What will help? What will hinder? Who are the stakeholders? You'd have everybody in the group answering them, either within the time that you've got there. So you'd do it as a brainstorm, yeah, or you'd have it done in advance, depending. So I've done, sometimes I've done this with, with some of my clients. We sent out the questions in advance, and we've converted them into variables before we even start the workshop. I'm just sharing all of this with you because we've got some choices to make about what you do with the time that's available. Right. So this is quite immersive, and it's basically, as you've seen yourself, it's about finding some of the pieces of the jigsaw, starting to link them, and that the linking and asking the question starts to reveal other pieces that were missing from the questions.
Yep.
So that's method 1. Method 2 would be what I call loop. So this is where often, I don't think this necessarily applies for you. It's where, as with do you remember us talking about the little hospital beds example?
Yep.
And what we got there was typically what people have as a problem is a reinforcing loop working in a vicious direction. And so they're very aware of that. So you can plot that loop really quickly and then start to ask the questions from the loop to say, well, okay, we said that X affects Y, what else affects Y? So that's a loop way in. Method 3, which is the single variable way in, is to start from one single point, probably one desired objective. So you saw when we were just looking earlier at, families wanting to move to Superior. You could have that as the key variable that you're going to start with, that's something you want to explore, or you want to explore time available for participation. Whatever it might be, you put that variable down and you start to ask the questions about it. So what affects this and how? And you literally start to build out from a single variable. And then the final way is a straw man. Now, a straw man would be where you take a pre-prepared model into the meeting to show people and basically say to them, this is one I've pre-prepared. We're going to go through it, understand it, check it to see whether it works in your mind that way. Where it doesn't, we'll explore it further, add what needs to be explored, change the names if the names of the variables don't make sense, add extra relationships, add extra variables, and so on as we go through. The big thing that all these can take varying amounts of time and have different benefits and issues. So, for example, with a single variable, you need really strong facilitation. You need somebody who's going to really take charge of the group and push them through that process. Probably ditto to some extent with the loop, but probably less so. The jigsaw you've experienced yourself. So, and the big thing about those 3 methods is that basically the people have been involved in creating the model from scratch, but that takes time. You're seeing how much time that can take.
I'm glad I've gone through it because I was pretty no on the straw man in the onset. And the more I've gotten into this, and as I see how deep it can go, a straw man may be the most beneficial, not just for the time aspect, but also the engagement aspect too. Because if it feels like we've been at this for 40 minutes and we only have X amount of variables and we know there's a zillion, then it might actually just be good on multiple fronts to get going with the straw man. I think in the medium of the straw man, I think makes a lot of sense. Like I could imagine myself doing a straw man in Venson and then like converting it onto paper, almost going backwards with it, because if it's in the computer, I think it's gonna lower the engagement, but if it's on paper and like getting those 4 big pieces of paper and taping them together, like you said, I think that could get us somewhere good.
Okay, so a paper-based straw man might be the right way in, because then you can use it also to explain the concept of a variable and the concept of relationships and the 2 types of relationships by showing the relationships that are in the straw man. Sometimes if you were to show a really complex straw man, people can shut off because they can look at it and see that it's too big.
Yeah.
So you might want to have a really small one
right.
to begin with.
Yep.
Yeah. And then you've got another one, which is the bigger one. So you start off with the smaller one as they get into it, and then you bring the bigger one out once they, so that you don't overwhelm them.
Yeah. Yeah.
These are all choices. I mean, you know, with unlimited time, of course, you know, you can go on, and this is going to develop anyway, because it's always a work in process. So, but you know, it's quite a big ask to, I think you've got, is it 4 hours?
Roughly, yeah.
Yeah. So, you know, we need to manage expectations about, you know, how far we get, because it depends on so much on the discussion. It's really, really difficult to say, you know, how far you'll get. But if you want to then at least show how you start to use the model, then you know, we need to keep some of the time back just to do some of that, or to illustrate how once the diagram is complete to an extent where people feel happy to start to use it, what that process involves. And you know, we talked about some of the things we can do quite easily with a paper-based model, and that is, you know, going through and identifying the parts that we can do something about, and then overlaying that to your current initiatives. So you start to, as we've said, identify some of the gaps and identify some of the expected impacts of some of the initiatives, and maybe some of the issues, some of the things that could be issues for it, risks with existing things.
You see us being able to do that part in the session on Saturday?
Yeah, I don't know. We can at least have a go with it. But some of the other things about, you know, the analysis that only really a computer can do, you know, so the computer being able to identify, you know, the feedback in that model. We can identify hubs by eye quite easily, you know, the things where there's a lot of activity.
Yeah, right.
You know, they're again things that we need to look at and pay attention to. But ultimately, you know, when we put them into Vensim and look at the amount of feedback, that can also be an incredibly helpful indicator of where to place some of your cards in terms of where to place your attention and design your initiatives.
I mean, I could imagine that we could have sort of like a desired end state for the session, and then like there's some like interim states that we might have to just be okay with if it doesn't go as smoothly or as quote unquote efficiently as it could. You know, so we say, okay, well, it looks like we're not going to get there, so let's just make the fallback is to get this far.
Yes.
And maybe it is just
see, you know, what their response is to seeing the straw man that you show,
right,
and you know, how much participation and how much challenge they make of it, things that are missing, you know, looking for the gaps that are in. And it's best, you know, that's why I said having a smaller model to begin with, and then maybe I can almost see like 3, you know, the really small one for them to get to understand the language, then a bigger one that has a lot of the stuff that you've got in whatever you decide to take in, but has some things missing that you know about, so that you can start to ask questions that will elicit some of those things to begin with, because that will give you confidence. That you've already thought about it. Whereas, and then moving on to, you know, the bigger openness of looking for things and that don't seem to have that seem not to have had as much attention as others, and asking, do we currently have everything? Have we captured everything that affects this? Is there anything else that's important here that we're missing? Now I can help you with what parts, if I've got access to this, whatever it is that you're going to share beforehand. You know, I can say, this is where I would be directing my attention if I was facilitating this to develop it further. So I can, you know, once we get to that stage, and maybe we need to think, you know, this week, I think that we definitely need to meet again at least once before your retreat, and talk about, you know, some of that. So the more work that we can have done on the model. So, you know, the one that you've got there, I mean, if you want to share that one with me, email it to me, and I can have a look and say, you know, what new questions I've got, or whether you want to do a bit more work on it, because I know it's not got everything from the Miro board, and we talked about a few other things. So do a little bit more work and then send me the new version, and I can have a look over it. And then the other thing that I'd like to talk about before Saturday is,
oh no, I just lost you, Kerry. I just missed what you said there before Saturday.
Yeah, I think we need to talk about what role you want me to play.
Yep.
So, you know, I can be there, and provided I can see, and this could be difficult because I know when this has been done in the past, it can be difficult to be able to see when you only have a certain camera view, what's going on. I can also ask some questions if you wanted me to, or I can be there purely to support you, so that or if I observe something that, you know, in terms of the process, that where I think there could be, you know, we could reorganize in a different way or do it slightly differently, you know, I can feed that in. So it depends what you want from me, but I'm happy to, you know, help in whatever way that you see fit.
Nice. Okay. So that's good. I was going to ask a similar question on the role. Another, and I have some thoughts there, but another one too is the Carl to Kerry handoff, or however you want to say that, because, you know, Friday we're going to be working with Carl, and it'd be good to have a conversation with him and the rest of us to see if we're all on the same page with how we want this all to flow, because we'll have a different facilitator on Friday, right? So we want that to have some coherence within it. Yeah.
Well, you know, I mean, it's interesting because you're saying a handoff to me. It's not really a handoff to me. It's a handoff to you.
Yeah,
it's a handoff to you. You know, the whole thing is about this being yours, and you being seen to be leading of it. And just because, you know, the interesting thing is, just because you're the facilitator, that doesn't mean that you're not contributing. In fact, as a facilitator, you end up making a lot of the contributions, you know. It's just that you're one step ahead of the rest of the people in the room because you've been through this process.
Right.
You know, so but describing that process, you know, the best way to do it, the best way to learn about this is by doing it, you know.
Yep.
And I know that, I mean, did you say you'd shared the video from our first session? Was it with your dad?
Oh, with my grandfather, my
grandfather. Okay, so none of the others currently, the other board members have not seen anything about systems.
No, not really.
Right. Okay. So again, we can talk about that. What sort of how we want to tee it up. What sort of an introduction we want to make.
Yeah. We need to talk again.
We do. So shall we set a time?
Yeah, let's do that.
And hold on, I'll just put in the chat those 3 Fed Wiki pages, because the final page was different tools. So, you know, paper and pen, you know, starting with the least technological, going to a whiteboard or a blackboard, going to a Miro or a Jamboard, going to then various other tools, and you'll see there's lots of different tools, and you'll see the one that we are using, Vensim PLE, down there, and some of the other tools after it, which are less good for causal loop diagramming and are more about getting into simulation, but you'll see that and
Nice.
make what use of it that you feel.
Copy, paste, and bookmark. Cool.
Okay, so when do we want to do?
Oh, and a question maybe, I guess, more for Mark, unless you've heard from him yourself, is do you know what role he wants to play in the mix?
Yeah, I don't know. I'll ask him.
Okay.
Yeah. Maybe he could come along to our next meeting.
Yeah, that'd be good. Okay. What are your time boxes? Like when is too late for you?
So, I mean, I'm generally flagging, after it's not after 10 o'clock at night.
Yeah, no, that's way too late. I mean, how's 8:30 my time on Wednesday?
I think I can do that. I know that Mark probably can't. I think he does his other meeting with the FedWiki group on Wednesday evenings. But we could go ahead and then schedule something else.
Oh, I see. Okay. Yeah, you just want to put it in there for now, do you think?
Yeah, okay. So 8:30 on Wednesday. You couldn't do slightly earlier? There is one, technically I've not agreed to do it, but there's a meeting at 9 o'clock.
Oh
9
yeah,
till
yeah,
10.
yeah, I totally can. Yeah, you want to do 8 on Wednesday?
Yeah.
Okay. 8 a.m. Arizona time, which is different than Pacific time now.
Oh, hold on. 8. Oh, do you mean 8 your time? I thought you meant 8 p.m. my time.
Excuse me. No, 8 a.m. my time. Yeah.
Okay, so what time? Okay, that's different then. Hold on. So 8 a.m. your time. Is that 5 hours? Is that 7 or 8 hours difference to me?
Okay, so right now it's 9:20 a.m.
9:20. So you're 7 hours. It's because it's 16:21 here.
Okay, so
Did you say it's 8? So that's
no, it's
that must be
9:21 a.m. So
okay. So yeah, so 9 to 16. Yeah, it's 7 hours. 7 hours difference. So 8 o'clock your time. You said, didn't you? Will be
15 yours.
15 mine. Yeah, that's fine.
Little early for Mark.
Yeah. Yeah, it's an hour earlier for Mark, isn't it? Well, I think I think if he wanted to make it, he could, because I think the FedWiki thing doesn't start till later.
Oh, I see. Okay, cool. Nice.
So you're going to send me an invite. So that's 3 o'clock, isn't it? Yes.
And what I'll do too is I'll just see if Carl can also join.
Mm-hmm. Will Carl be there on the Saturday?
I don't know if he'll be there on Saturday. He'll definitely be there Friday.
Right.
And so
because I won't be there Friday,
right.
It's the middle of the night. It's like, I don't know, 2, 3, 4 in the morning,
Oh, geez,
so I
yeah.
won't be there.
No, that's okay. Okay, I'll send out that calendar invite.
Great. And how's this been from your perspective?
So helpful, and yeah, I'm feeling grateful all the time for this. So I get,
Is it, you know, if there's
I
any
got
feedback of
myself.
anything that you feel that I could do differently, you know, I'd appreciate that as well.
Yeah, well, I'll hold that in mind, and then I'll probably have something more to say later on. But I mean, for now, I think this is all going really well.
Great, great, awesome. Okay then, well, good luck. And if you could send me whatever you have as a model before that meeting so that I
Okay.
can have had a chance to take a look at it, that would be really helpful.
Okay.
Great. I'll see you then.
Muchas gracias, Kerry. Thanks for
Yeah. Au revoir.
talk soon. Ciao.
Yeah, bye.